Welcome to the Springs in the Desert podcast. We're those friends that you can take with you wherever you are on the path of infertility. Hey there, Springs in the Desert listeners. I'm Jillian, your host, and today I am joined with a guest that I'm so excited to have back for many reasons. One, she's such a dear friend of the ministry. We have Bruno here today. We have had her on before, so we'll make sure to link that in our show notes so that you can access those recordings. But we're just so happy to have you back here today, Mary. We're going to talk about something really exciting that's going on in Mary's life a little bit later. But how are you doing today, Mary?
I'm doing great. It's just busy, but doing really well. And thank y'all so much. Gosh, that means so much to me to be a friends of Springs in the Desert. And y'all are just such a gift, really, truly. Wish y'all were here when I was first going through it, but so glad that we get to share you with everyone now.
Yes. It's so beautiful that we've heard that from a lot of people in the community. I wish you existed 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, however long it was when they started walking on this journey. And I'm so grateful that there are even more resources, and we're going to share a really beautiful one today. But I think preemptively, before we get into that, I think the whole reason that Springs exists, that the resource that we're going to talk about of yours that exists soon, is because prayer, the spiritual life in a season of infertility, can feel so heavy. It can be difficult, and maybe not for everyone, or it can ebb and flow. But it is typically, there are a lot of big questions that we're asking God in this season. And so I just wanted to open it up there, Mary. How maybe have you seen in your own life or in others' lives, that how might our relationship with God be affected in a season of infertility?
Oh, that's so tough. I think that there's a lot of different things that we feel in our relationship with God with any type of suffering. And infertility is unique. I think it hits us in very deep places because we feel an attack on our womanhood. We feel an attack on our marriage, an attack on us as Catholic women and friendships. We feel like we are hit in lots of different ways. And so I think that it would be strange for us not to have some type of reaction to God, who loves us so much, but we don't always feel that. As far as prayer goes, there's so many different ways that we can pray. And I think we forget that, or maybe we don't know it in the first place. I know I certainly didn't. It's something that I'm always growing and understanding of. The thing, when you first said that, what came to my heart is that a cry to God is a prayer. Pleading with God is a prayer. Because we talk about prayer as being conversation with God. That can look so many different ways. And I know it wasn't until I was honest with God and really cried out to him, was how could you? That's when things started to open up for me. I didn't get pregnant. My situation didn't change, but my perception of it did. And I learned even in my own marriage, for a while I was bitter because I was thinking my husband needs to pray like me. Why isn't he praying like me? Because obviously the best way to do it. And my spiritual director once told me, tell me what he does. When my husband loves to work with his hands. He loves to build things, and he loves being around other people. And that's his way of praying. And so it really caused me to look at myself and to be a little more open, to be okay, there's lots of different ways to pray. And so I just want to give you the freedom and the permission. Sometimes we feel like we need permission to find your way or ways. It can be multiple ways. But for me, I have my prayer in the morning. It looks a couple of different ways, but it's the ways that I like. But I also feel like I pray in my writing. In that it's so healing for me, and God speaks to me when I write. And so I try to be conscious of that, to make that a prayer and to cooperate with that.
I love that. There's so many pieces of what you said that I think are so beautiful and so just right on, because one, it can feel, like you said, an attack on our identity and who we are. And that can bring really big questions to God and our existence and our purpose in life and what our calling is. And then you said our marriage, our vocation. There are big questions. Did I discern correctly? Lord, what are you doing with our lives? How can we be fruitful? What does fruitfulness even mean? There's these really big questions that I know so many in our community are wrestling with. And I love this idea that there are different ways to pray. And I know in my own life, that's changed in different seasons too. I think that's something that maybe took me by surprise a little bit, that ways that I maybe prayed when I was younger, or maybe with my family or friends, or as I was in college and in my career, it changed. And that I found that I was trying to make one way of praying fit. Like, this is how I'm supposed to pray, or this is how I know how to pray. And so I just have to do it, but it feels dry or empty, or I'm just not even focused and I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And so I love this idea that there are so many ways to pray. And I think that's a really great question. What does your husband like to do? Working with his hands and
service.
yes, yes. And that I think there are so many saints that give really great examples of various ways to pray. And it's just so important, right? Because if we don't have that communication with God, we aren't hearing what he's asking of us and what he's saying into our situation. And he is, right? He's always extending that hand. But sometimes it feels really difficult to grab it and say, yes, Lord, what are we doing? What are we doing today? So yeah, I really love that. And I think if someone doesn't really know like where to go right now, they're struggling in prayer, what are some resources that, or some help, some aids that they could go to re-enter into a life of prayer?
I always love the rosary, so I'll recommend that all the time. Just getting curious about your own self and your style, what you're drawn to. Also asking God, like, how am I going to pray best? And help reveal that to me. Reveal to me the parts of my day and my life that you're trying to speak to me, and how I can give glory to you. Like for my husband, like he's giving glory to God through working with his hands. And obviously Springs in the Desert, and we have a lot of other amazing Catholic organizations as well. I contribute also to these in the sense of resources in the book. I've written 2 books, and
Yes.
one has just come out recently, and it's called Holding Space for Joy. I don't know if anybody
Woohoo.
can see me right now, but is this a video?
Yes, they
Okay.
can. They can. Yeah.
Here it is. It's a short 112-ish, I think, page book. It's short, but it's packed. So it might take a little while to get through, but this is just my effort based on, so like I had this crazy journey of infertility, which lasted about 8-ish years until I had a hysterectomy. And it was the worst suffering I've ever experienced in my life. But through stepping into that suffering, getting curious about it, inviting God into it, being honest with him and being angry at him, and then letting him take me every day from there. It took many years, but I've found that acceptance before I even had my hysterectomy. And so I could look back and see what helped me to get there. So this book it's basically 9 of the concepts that helped me to get there. And I'm just so pleased to say when I was going through it, it's like you hear these stories and people, it's well intentioned and it's great to hear about women who are infertile and get pregnant. But I just knew no one could promise that to me. So I wanted to hear, is there a woman that exists that never gets pregnant and is still okay? And by the grace of God, praise be to God, I became that woman. And so I want to share that with other people because I live a lot of joy, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart, and it's possible. So that's what I hope to help women uncover for themselves in this book.
Yeah, I think so many women and couples are looking for that story, because a lot of books, resources end with that like miracle pregnancy story, or the sort of that answer to the prayer story, which is so beautiful, miraculous, like such a gift, but not everyone's story. And it's particularly can be difficult to read if you aren't that person, if that doesn't fit your story. And so there's a limited number of resources out there that do talk about the perspective of joy if a pregnancy hasn't occurred, and or if you weren't able to carry a child to term, right? It's being able to see that God is working wonders in your life, even though you're carrying this cross, right, that I think it's such a mystery that we try to talk about a lot here at Springs, right? We have the crucifixion and the resurrection and the ascension, and they're all part of this Paschal mystery. Like, they're all crucial components. And that's like that Jesus understands all of it. He's been through all of it. And so I really appreciate that perspective. And it's so, I was just telling the team listeners that Mary's latest book is just perfect. Put in your adoration bag or your prayer bag or in your prayer space. It's small enough that it fits anywhere that you want it to be, and it's light enough to carry it with you, but it is just packed full of so many great, I think, like prayer prompts and perspectives and situations to let the Lord lead you through. And I think one of my favorite parts of the book is that each chapter has these several different ways to pray with that theme, I guess, if you would say. And I'm just wondering, Mary, if you would share a little bit about why you did that and how that might be helpful to someone to have all these different ways to pray.
Yeah, so the idea of a journal came from a dear friend of mine, Jen Lorette, she and her husband started Surprised by Marriage. Actually, you might have heard of them. They're on
Yes.
Instagram and they have this great email list. But anyway, so she gave me the idea for a daily journal. And I just loved it. And actually wrote this before 12 Stripes Deep was published, most of it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been,
Okay.
now when I connected with our Sunday visitor, they suggested I add 3 details. So I added the first, the second, and the last one, which ended up becoming some of my favorites. But anyway, when I sat down to actually start writing, it was just like, it didn't feel right to do a daily reflection, but to just consider my story and what got me through these times. So I picked out these concepts and then created a prayer. At first, I was writing my own prayers. And then after a while, I thought, man, it would be great if I could I love bringing people together and giving women lots of different options to move forward with. And so, of course, I thought of y'all, Springs in the Desert, and I asked y'all to contribute a prayer, write your own prayer, pick your concept. I had already used a couple of them, but you guys picked 2 prayers that spoke to y'all and ended up writing 2 prayers, which I just loved. And then there, I think 3 other or Catholic infertility organizations who also added some prayers. So you're going to get different voices.
Yeah.
And also go and find them and continue your journey with them. And so just thought that was really cool. And then the songs, I think most people do that. You can really enter in such a unique way with music. It just touches us differently.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just a really meaningful, kind of fun time picking the songs that match with each concept. You get some podcasts as well.
Yes.
And so there's about 3-ish songs with each concept. By the way, a follower created a Spotify playlist with all these songs. So I want to say this, you guys, if you are reading the book, send me a direct message on Instagram and I'll send you a link to this Spotify list. I just thought it was so cool.
Yeah.
And it's got some podcasts on it too.
Okay.
And then a big part of our journey, I don't think we think of journaling as a prayer, but it absolutely is. And this is a way of the memoir, 12 Stripes Deep, is sharing an experience with solidarity. And this is more, I want to help you go deep in what are the ways that God is trying to work through you, through your experience. And that's what the question, after you've read these concepts, you spend a little time reading a special prayer that goes with it, enter into the song if you want. If you don't, skip it. You can skip the journal prompts if you want, but the journal prompts are helping you to really dig deep into yourself to answer these questions. So yeah, it just was organic. And the Holy Spirit just led there.
Yeah, I really appreciate that, because as we started this episode out, that each concept has a little write-up that I think is helpful, because if you're struggling maybe with that concept, I think we've said this a few times too over the course of this podcast, that sometimes the first step for people who are in this season, who are trying to find some healing, is accepting that infertility is something to be grieved. And it's not until someone says that or says that this is a real loss, this is something really to process and to mourn and to really bring to prayer, to talk through with your spouse, maybe even talk to a mental health professional. It's not until you say that someone, like you said, might feel like, oh, wow, that's what's happening. And maybe even that permission, sometimes having someone give you that encouragement to accept that help, to accept the reality. And I think that your write-ups do that for each of the sections. They give this, okay, that the reader can look into. And then, yeah, the prayer, sometimes you just don't have the words. You have the feelings. And sometimes, yeah, you can give those feelings to God. He knows what all of those feel like, but you just don't know exactly how to say it or what you're trying to express. And so I love that there's a prayer written there that you could pray even with your spouse to be able to process that concept. And I totally agree with the music. I have some really pivotal moments in my life where music has been how God has given me, has just spoken to me and what I really needed to hear. So I love that there are suggestions, and I always like finding new artists that are speaking into that. So I love that there were several that you could find some new artists, and so appreciative of the podcast. Mary had linked several podcasts in there, and some of them are from Springs to give some further resource and support. So that was really a great idea. And then the journal prompts too. Journaling is absolutely, I loved how you said at the beginning that writing is how God speaks to you. And journaling, I just feel like God takes the pen and just is telling me what I need to hear. And so I am so thankful that you were able to give so many different ways to pray that I think, like I said, not only incorporate the individual, but could incorporate their spouse if they would like to. And we at Springs, we've started small groups in various areas around the country. And so I think these concepts too could be a really beautiful way to dive deeper together and in a group of friends. And I think that's really beautiful. And would you say, I would say maybe yes, but if someone opens up your book, Mary, and they're really resonating with let's say, the concept number 4, do you think that your book is something that needs to be done linearly? So they go from concept 1 through 9, or do you think someone could jump in the middle?
Theoretically, I think you could jump in the middle. And I say that in the introduction, this is at your own pace. Everybody's healing journey is unique. We're different people. And I love that about it. I love that God has made us so different. So
yeah,
you take it piece by piece, whatever fits for you. You don't have to do the journaling. That's why we didn't put journal in the title, because not everybody likes to journal, and it's totally could just be read without doing any journaling. So I think the order it's in makes sense for me, but you got to make it your own.
Yeah, I love that because it's such a gift from you. This, listeners, I think sometimes we don't necessarily see the ways that God is bringing fruit into the world through our labors and our actions. And this book is just such a beautiful example of your story, your life bringing fruit into the world, and that others can be nourished and brought closer to Christ through this aid. And yeah, I'm so grateful for that. We're definitely going to link it in the notes. But Mary, where is the easiest place for our listeners to be able to buy your book?
So you can go to our Sunday Visitor bookstore online or Amazon. And there's also, I understand it's a few different places online if you want to just search your favorite online bookstore. And my website is marygbruno.com. You can access it, the links through there as well.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll make sure to get that all in the notes. Before we take off, though, Mary, what would be maybe one last piece of encouragement that you would give to someone who is maybe waiting for your book to arrive in the mail and they're really wanting to re-enter into the life of prayer and are struggling? What would you say to them?
We were talking a few minutes ago about understanding that it's possible to not ever get pregnant and be okay, that whole concept. And it just made me think that sometimes we think the only miracle is to get pregnant or to have a full-term pregnancy. There's some people in my life very close to me, or maybe one in particular I'm thinking of, who, I don't know, the way they addressed me made it seem like that, like they were more sad than I was. But I'm like, I frequently have to be like, but God did create a miracle in me. Look at the joy I'm experiencing, the acceptance that he's given me, all the ways I'm able to be fruitful. Now I still feel the pain. I'm not saying that pain is gone. Like
Yep.
my body is missing something good, right? So that's going to be painful, but it hasn't held me back in the sense of my call to fruitfulness as a wife, as a mother to our adopted child, as a friend. And so just to encourage people with that and to bring that to prayer, to ask God to transform. Let me see this as you want me to see this, God.
That is so beautiful. God's working all things together for the good of those who love him. It's just so true. Mary, I'm just so grateful for your friendship and for this resource. And I can't wait for our listeners to get it in their hands. If you are wanting to find Mary, definitely check out the links in the show notes. We'll link to her social media and her website and all of her beautiful resources. We're so grateful that you're here, and it's an honor to walk with you. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining us for this Springs in the Desert podcast episode. We would be so grateful if you took a minute to rate and review us so that we can reach more listeners. Don't forget to check out our social media pages on Facebook and Instagram, and go to our website, springsinthedesert.org, where you can sign up for our newsletter and community prayer list, read our blog, and register for virtual and in-person events. Most importantly, remember that God loves you so much, and so do we.